forest was silent except for the sound of Ilara's own breathing, ragged and shallow, as she lay against the cold roots of an old pine tree. Blood soaked through her torn dress, staining the earth beneath her. Her arm hung useless at her side, broken in the fight against the rogue wolves who had crossed the northern border an hour before. She had fought bravely, had thrown herself between the invaders and two young pack members who could not yet defend themselves. She had saved their lives. Now she wondered if anyone would come to save hers. She lifted her head slightly, searching the tree line for movement, for torches, for anything that meant help was near. In the distance, she could hear voices, familiar voices, her mate's voice. Damien Frostmoon, Alpha King of the Frostmoon Kingdom, stood only a few hundred feet away, surrounded by his guards and council members. Ilara tried to call out, but her voice came out as barely more than a whisper. She watched as one of the guards turned toward the sound, took a single step in her direction, and then stopped when Damien raised his hand. "Leave her," Damien said, his tone flat, distracted. "She is not badly hurt. She will manage." The words hit Ilara harder than any wound she had taken that night. She had been his Luna for 3 years. She had stood beside him through wars, through famine, through the loss of his father. And now, bleeding on the forest floor, she was being dismissed as an inconvenience. Beside Damien stood Celine, a woman from a neighboring pack who had once been his intended mate, before fate had chosen Ilara instead. Celine's lips curled into the faintest smile, as she watched the guards turn away from the fallen Luna. She said nothing, but she did not need to. Her satisfaction was clear enough. "My Alpha," one of the younger guards said carefully, "the Luna is injured. Should we not?" "I said leave her," Damien snapped, already turning back toward the kingdom. "I have matters to attend to. She is strong. She will find her own way back." And with that, the Alpha King walked away, his guards following behind him, leaving Ilara alone in the dark, cold forest, her body broken and her heart broken worse. She did not know how long she lay there. Time seemed to stretch and blur with the pain. She drifted in and out of awareness, the cold seeping into her bones, until she heard footsteps. Quick, purposeful, careful. She braced herself, unsure whether to hope or fear. "Luna Ilara?" The voice was unfamiliar but gentle. She forced her eyes open and saw a young man kneeling beside her, his eyes wide with alarm at the sight of her wounds. She recognized him vaguely. Cale Ashworth. He had recently been assigned as her personal guard, a quiet, serious wolf, who had said little to her in the weeks since his appointment. She had barely noticed him before. Now his face was the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. "You're hurt badly," Cale said, already removing his jacket to press against the wound on her side. "I need to get you help. Can you hear me? Stay with me, Luna." "The Alpha," Ilara whispered. "He left." Cale's jaw tightened, but he said nothing about it. Instead, he gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of her broken arm, and began walking swiftly toward the healer's cabin at the edge of the territory, away from the main kingdom halls. "Why are you helping me?" Ilara managed to ask, her voice fading. "You could face punishment," he said, to leave me. "He is not my Alpha in matters of conscience," Cale answered simply. "I am your guard. Guarding you means keeping you alive, not walking away when it becomes difficult." Something about his words settled deep into her chest, a warmth she had not felt from anyone in a long time. They reached the healer's cabin as the first hints of gray began to touch the sky. The healer, an old wolf named Mabel who had served the pack for decades, immediately set to work, cleaning and stitching Ilara's wounds, setting her broken arm with practiced hands. Cale stayed by the door the entire time, refusing to leave, his eyes dark with a quiet, simmering anger he did not voice aloud. "She will live," Mabel finally said, wiping her hands on a cloth, "but she needs rest, real rest, not the kind she gets pretending everything is fine for the sake of the pack." Cale nodded and moved to sit beside the bed where Ilara now lay, pale but breathing steadily. He did not speak much, but he stayed. Through the rest of the night, as the fire crackled low in the hearth, he kept watch, refilling her water, adjusting her blankets when she shivered, present in a way that felt entirely unfamiliar to her. "You don't have to stay," Ilara murmured near dawn, her eyes heavy. "I know," Cale said, I want to. She fell asleep to those words, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt safe. Word of what happened spread through the kingdom quickly, as such things always did. By morning, whispers filled the halls of the Frostmoon estate. The Luna had been left injured in the forest. The Alpha King had walked away from his own mate. Pack members who had once respected Damien's strength now looked at him with quiet, simmering doubt. Loyalty, after all, was often built on the belief that a leader would protect his own people, especially the one closest to him. Damien returned to his chambers that morning, feeling the weight of the night's decisions pressing on him, though he told himself it had been necessary, that the political tension with Celine's pack required his full attention, that Elara truly was strong enough to manage on her own. But as the hours passed and reports came back that no one had seen the Luna return to the estate, an uneasy feeling began to creep into his chest. "Where is she?" he demanded of his council by midday, his patience thinning. No one had an answer. It was not until one of the guards, the same young one who had questioned him the night before, finally spoke up. "She was taken to the healer's cabin, my Alpha, by Cale Ashworth. She has not returned since." Damien's expression darkened. "Bring them both to me." But when the guards arrived at the cabin, they found it empty. Mabel informed them, with a pointed look that left little room for argument, that the Luna had left at first light, escorted by her guard, toward the neutral lands bordering the eastern hills, land that belonged to no pack, protected by ancient treaties that even an Alpha King could not violate without cause. By the time Damien arrived at the border himself, the sun had fully risen. He found Elara standing beneath a large oak tree, her arm bound in a sling, her face pale but composed. Cale stood a respectful distance beside her, alert and watchful, though he said nothing as the Alpha King approached. "Elara," Damien's voice softened as he stepped closer, reaching for her uninjured hand. "I was wrong to leave you last night. I let the pressure of the council cloud my judgment. Come home. We will speak of this properly, and I will make it right." For a long moment, Elara said nothing. She studied the man who had once been the center of her entire world, searching his face for the answer she needed. She did not find it. "You did not simply make a mistake, Damien," she finally said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion still lingering in her bones. "You looked at me, bleeding on the ground, and you chose to walk away, not because you had no choice, because it was easier. Elara, please." "I gave you 3 years," she continued. "I stood beside you through everything, including moments when it would have been easier for me to walk away too. But I never did, because I believed our bond meant something. Last night, you showed me exactly what it means to you." Damien's eyes flicked briefly to Cale, a flash of something sharp and possessive crossing his features. "And him? Is this why you refused to come home? Because this guard carried you a mile through the woods?" "He did not just carry me," Elara said quietly. "He stayed. He listened. He treated my life as though it mattered, without needing to weigh it against politics or pride. That is not something you can be jealous of, Damien. That is something you failed to give me yourself." The council members who had followed Damien to the border shifted uncomfortably, murmurs passing between them. Celine, who had also come along, watched with narrowed eyes, sensing the ground shifting beneath the carefully built plans she had hoped to secure. "There are laws," Damien said, his voice rising slightly with frustration. "You are my Luna. You cannot simply choose to leave." It was old Elder Rowan, who had traveled with the group, who finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of decades of pack tradition. "There is a law, Alpha Damien, that you seem to have forgotten in your anger. An old law, rarely invoked, but no less valid. If a Luna is abandoned by her mate in a moment of battle or grave danger, and survives through the aid of another, she holds the right to reject the mate bond publicly, before witnesses, without punishment or consequence to herself or her protector." Silence fell over the gathering. Damien stared at the elder, then at Elara, disbelief and dawning realization crossing his face in equal measure. "You cannot mean to invoke that," Celine said quickly, stepping forward. "It is an ancient law, barely remembered." "But it is remembered," Elder Rowan said firmly, "and it stands." Elara took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her shoulders. She looked at Damien one last time, searching for even a flicker of the man she had once loved so completely. She found only fear now, fear of losing power, of losing status, of losing control, not fear of losing her. "I invoke the law," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the clearing. "I reject the mate bond, before these witnesses, of my own free will." Damien took a step forward as though to argue, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. The council members around him exchanged glances, and even Celine remained silent, recognizing that whatever plans she had once hoped to build upon Damien's throne now stood on uncertain ground. Ilara turned to Chaol, who had remained quietly beside her through the entire exchange, his expression unreadable, but his presence steady as stone. "Thank you," she said softly, "for coming for me." "I would come for you again," Chaol replied simply, "every time." As the morning sun climbed higher over the hills, casting warm light across the clearing, Ilara walked away from the life she had once known, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with a quiet strength that had been forged in the coldest hours of the night before. She did not look back at the throne she was leaving behind. She did not need to. Chaol walked beside her, matching her pace, saying nothing more than was needed, simply present in the way he had always been, since the moment he found her in the forest. It was not a grand declaration of love, not yet. It was something quieter, steadier, built on the simple truth that he had chosen to stay when it would have been easy to walk away. In the weeks that followed, word spread through the neighboring territories of what had happened at the Frostmoon border. Some called it scandal, others called it justice. But those who had seen Ilara's face in that clearing, calm and resolute despite everything she had endured, knew it for what it truly was, a woman reclaiming the worth that had been carelessly discarded and finding it valued fully by someone new. Damien remained Alpha King, his throne intact, but something had shifted within the kingdom that would not soon be forgotten. Loyalty, once given freely, is not so easily regained once broken, and the pack that had watched their Luna abandoned in her darkest hour would remember, for many years, the choice their king had made, and the price it had cost him. As for Ilara, she found in the quiet days that followed a kind of peace she had not known in years. She healed slowly, both in body and in spirit, with Chaol's steady presence beside her through it all. Not as a replacement for what she had lost, but as proof that some bonds are built not on titles or expectations, but on the simple, unwavering choice to show up when it matters most. He had been her king, but it was Chaol who made her feel, for the first time in a long while, like a woman worth fighting for.